My name is Octavia Green, and I'm 67 years old. For 42 years, I was married to a man who thought the streets were more important than his family. A man who chose his friends, his reputation, and his so-called freedom over his wife and children. His name was Arch Green, and he thought he could treat me like nothing and get away with it. He was wrong. The day I bought his house, the house he'd worked his whole life for, the house he'd kicked me out of, the house he thought was his greatest achievement, was the day Arch Green learned exactly who I was. And the look on his face when he found out, I'll remember it forever. I stood on the front porch of the house on Maple Street, the house Arch had bragged about for 20 years, the house where we'd raised our children, the house he'd thrown me out of 3 years ago. Except now, it was my house. Arch stood in the doorway, his face twisted in confusion and rage. He was 69 years old, still trying to look tough in his leather jacket and gold chains, still trying to be the street king he thought he was. "What are you doing here, Octavia?" he demanded. "I told you never to come back to my house." I smiled calmly and pulled out a document from my purse. "Your house? Arch, this hasn't been your house for 3 weeks now." "What are you talking about?" Arch's voice was sharp with anger. "I'm talking about the fact that I bought this house," I said clearly, "at the foreclosure auction, for cash." Arch's face went pale. You what?" I held up the deed, the official property deed with my name on it. Octavia Green, sole owner. "I bought your house, Arch," I repeated. "The house you were so proud of, the house you kicked me out of because you said I didn't contribute anything. The house you said was all yours. Well, guess what? It's mine now." "That's impossible," Arch shouted. "You don't have that kind of money, you're just a—" "Just a what?" I interrupted. "Just a housewife. Just the woman who raised your children while you were out in the streets. Just the woman you threw away like garbage." Arch's hands were shaking. "How did you? Where did you get the money?" "That's the beautiful part, Arch," I said, my smile growing wider. "I've always had money, lots of it. I just never told you." "You're lying," Arch said, but his voice was uncertain now. "I'm not lying," I said. "And you have 30 days to move out of my house. I'm the landlord now. And unlike you, I believe in following the law." I turned to walk back to my car, but Arch grabbed my arm. "You can't do this," he yelled. "This is my house. I worked for this." I pulled my arm free and looked him straight in the eyes. "You should have thought about that before you chose the streets over your family," I said quietly. "Now you'll see what it feels like to lose everything." I got in my car and drove away, leaving Arch standing there in shock, staring at the deed in his shaking hands. But to understand how we got to this moment, I need to take you back to where it all began. I met Arch in 1983 when I was 25 years old. I was working as a bank teller, and he came in one day to open an account. He was handsome, tall, confident, with a smile that could light up a room. He flirted with me while I processed his paperwork, and by the time he left, he'd asked me out to dinner. I said yes. For the first year, Arch was wonderful. He was charming, attentive, and ambitious. He worked as a mechanic and talked about opening his own auto shop someday. "I'm going to be somebody, Octavia," he'd tell me. "I'm going to make something of myself, and I want you by my side when I do." I believed him, and when he asked me to marry him in 1984, I said yes without hesitation. We got married in a small ceremony with our families. I was so happy, so hopeful about our future together. But things started changing almost immediately after the wedding. Arch had always had friends, guys from the neighborhood he'd grown up with. But after we got married, he started spending more and more time with them. "I'm just hanging out with the boys," he'd say when I asked where he was going. "Nothing wrong with that." At first it was 1 night a week, then 2 nights, then 3. By our first anniversary, Arch was out almost every night, coming home at 2 or 3 in the morning, smelling like alcohol and cigarettes. "Arch, we just got married," I'd say. "Don't you want to spend time with me?" "I do spend time with you," he'd snap. "But I'm not going to be one of those weak men who lets his wife control him. I need my freedom." "I'm not trying to control you," I'd protest. "I just miss you." "You're being clingy," Arch would say. "A man needs his space. A man needs the streets." The streets, that became his favorite phrase. I need the streets. The streets are calling me. A man can't survive without the streets. I tried to understand. I tried to be the supportive wife, but it hurt watching my husband choose his friends and the streets over me. Then I got pregnant with our first child. When I told Arch I was pregnant, I thought maybe he'd change. Maybe becoming a father would make him want to stay home more. I was wrong. "That's great, baby," Arch said when I told him the news. "But you know I still need my time. Being a father doesn't mean I have to give up my life." Our daughter, Zenobia, was born in 1985. She was beautiful, perfect, and I loved her instantly. But Arch barely seemed to notice. He came to the hospital when she was born, held her for 5 minutes, took a few pictures, and then said, "All right, I'm going to celebrate with the boys. I'll be back later." He didn't come back for 3 days. I was alone in the hospital with our newborn baby, and my husband was out, celebrating in the streets. That's when I realized my marriage was never going to be what I'd hoped for. But I stayed because I loved him, because I believed in our vows, because I thought maybe, eventually, he'd grow up and choose his family. He never did. Over the next 10 years, we had 3 more children: Pearlie in 1987, Judge in 1990, and Winnie in 1993. And with each child, Arch became more absent. He'd work during the day at various mechanic jobs, never staying anywhere long because he'd get fired for showing up late or not showing up at all. Then at night, he'd hit the streets. "Where's Daddy?" the kids would ask. "He's out with friends," I'd say, trying to hide my pain. "Why doesn't he ever stay home with us?" Zenobia asked when she was 8. "Daddy loves you," I'd tell her. "He's just busy." But the truth was, Arch didn't prioritize us. He prioritized his image, his reputation in the streets, his friends. He wanted to be known as the cool guy, the one everyone wanted to hang out with, the one who was always available for a drink or a card game or whatever trouble his friends were getting into. Meanwhile, I was home alone, raising 4 children, paying bills, and trying to hold our family together. Money was always tight. Arch would work, but he'd spend most of his paycheck on himself. New clothes, new shoes, drinks for his friends, gambling. "I work hard," he'd say when I asked why there was so little money left for the household. "I deserve to enjoy myself." "But the kids need shoes," I'd say. "The electric bill is overdue." "Then figure it out," Arch would snap. "That's what wives do. They manage the home." So I did. I stretched every dollar. I shopped at thrift stores. I clipped coupons. I worked part-time jobs when I could find babysitters. And I saved. Every spare penny I could hide, I saved. I opened a secret bank account that Arch knew nothing about, and slowly, bit by bit, I put money away. Not because I was planning to leave him, not yet, but because I knew I needed security. I knew I couldn't rely on Arch to take care of us. In 1998, Arch came home excited about something for the first time in years. "Baby, I found us a house," he said. "A real house, not this tiny apartment. 3 bedrooms, a yard for the kids on Maple Street." "How can we afford a house?" I asked. "We barely afford this apartment." "I got a loan," Arch said. "I'm going to work harder, make more money. This is our chance to have something real." Against my better judgment, I let myself hope. Maybe this house would change things. Maybe having a real home would make Arch settle down, be present, be a father. We moved into the house on Maple Street, and for about 3 months, things were better. Arch came home more. He helped with repairs. He seemed proud of the house. But then, slowly, the old pattern returned. The streets called him back. And I was once again alone in that house, raising 4 children, while my husband lived his life like he was single. The breaking point came in 2015. I was 60 years old, and I was exhausted. Exhausted from raising children alone. Exhausted from managing a household on scraps. Exhausted from loving a man who didn't love me back. One night, Arch came home at 4 in the morning. I was waiting in the living room. "Where were you?" I asked. "Out," Arch said. "Don't start, Octavia." "Arch, I can't do this anymore," I said, tears in my eyes. "I can't keep being married to someone who's never here." "Then leave," Arch said coldly. "Nobody's forcing you to stay." "This is my home too," I said. "Our children grew up here." "My home," Arch corrected. "The mortgage is in MY name. This is MY house. And if you don't like how I live my life, you know where the door is." I stared at him in shock. "Are you really saying that?" "Yeah, I am," Arch said. "I'm tired of you complaining. I'm tired of you trying to control me. I'm a grown man and I do what I want." "What about your family?" I asked. "What about your wife?" "What about them?" Arch shrugged. "The kids are grown, they don't need me anymore. And you've been nagging me for 30 years. Maybe it's time we both moved on." That's when I knew. My marriage was over. Not because I wanted it to be, but because Arch had never really been in it. A week after that conversation, I did something I'd never done before. I went through Arch's things. I found bank statements showing he'd been taking out loans against the house. Loans I knew nothing about. I found receipts for expensive dinners and hotel rooms, places he'd never taken me. I found text messages on his phone from women who clearly didn't know he was married. Arch hadn't just chosen the streets over our family. He'd been living a completely separate life. And the house on Maple Street, the house he was so proud of, the house he claimed was his, was mortgaged to the point of almost being underwater. Arch was drowning in debt, and he'd been lying to me about it for years. That night, I went to my secret bank account, the one I'd been contributing to for 30 years. I'd saved $157,000. $157,000 that Arch knew nothing about. Money I'd scraped together from part-time jobs, from selling crafts, from saving every penny I could. I took that money, and I went to see a lawyer. Her name was Dovie Patterson, and she specialized in divorce cases. "Mrs. Green," Dovie said after I told her everything, "you have grounds for divorce. Abandonment, financial infidelity, emotional abuse. We can get you out of this marriage and make sure you get your fair share." "I don't just want out," I said. "I want justice. I want him to feel what I've felt for 40 years. "What do you mean?" Dovie asked. "That house on Maple Street," I said. "He's so proud of it. He thinks it makes him important. I want to take it from him." Dovie leaned forward. "Tell me more." Over the next few months, Dovie and I worked on a plan. First, we filed for divorce. Arch was served papers, and he barely reacted. "Fine," he said when I told him. "I don't need you anyway, but you're not getting my house." "We'll let the court decide," I said calmly. Meanwhile, Dovie did some digging. She discovered that Arch had missed several mortgage payments. The bank was about to foreclose on the house. "Perfect," I said when she told me. "Let them foreclose." "You want to lose the house?" Dovie asked, confused. "No," I said with a smile. "I want to buy it at the foreclosure auction, for cash." Dovie's eyes widened. That's brilliant and ruthless." "Arch taught me to be ruthless," I said. "He just didn't realize I was paying attention." We waited. Sure enough, 3 months later, the bank foreclosed on the house. Arch was devastated. "This is your fault," he screamed at me over the phone. "You made me lose my house." "I had nothing to do with it, Arch," I said honestly. "You stopped paying the mortgage, that's on you." "I'm going to get it back," Arch vowed. "I'm going to buy it at auction." "Good luck with that," I said, knowing he didn't have any money. The auction was scheduled for the following month. On the day of the auction, I dressed carefully in an emerald green suit with gold accessories. I looked successful, powerful, and confident. Everything Arch had always told me I wasn't. The auction was held at the county courthouse. There were about 20 people there, all looking to buy foreclosed properties. Arch was there too, looking desperate and angry. He saw me and his eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "Same thing as everyone else," I said calmly. "Looking at properties." "Stay away from my house," Arch warned. It's not your house anymore, I reminded him. It's the bank's house, and soon it'll belong to whoever has the money to buy it. Arch's face went red, but he didn't say anything else. The auction began. Various properties were called up and people bid on them. Finally, the auctioneer called out, "Next property, 847 Maple Street. 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Opening bid, $85,000. Arch's hand shot up. $85,000. Someone else bid, $90,000. Arch bid again, $92,000. The bidding continued. Arch kept raising his hand, his face getting more desperate with each bid. When it hit $120,000, Arch stopped. He couldn't go higher. Going once, going twice. $150,000, I said clearly. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me. Arch's face went pale. "Octavia, no, don't do this." $150,000, the auctioneer repeated. "Any other bids?" Silence. Going once, going twice. Sold to the lady in green for $150,000. Arch stood there, frozen, as I walked up to sign the paperwork. "You can't do this," he whispered as I passed him. "That's my house." "Was your house," I corrected. "Now it's mine." 3 weeks later, I stood on the porch of MY house, holding the eviction notice I was about to serve to Arch. That's where this story began, with me telling Arch he had 30 days to get out of the house he'd been so proud of. The house he'd kicked me out of. The house he'd said was all his. The house that was now mine. "You're really going to do this?" Arch asked, his voice breaking. "You're really going to throw me out?" "You threw me out 3 years ago," I said. "Remember, you said it was your house and I could leave if I didn't like it. Well, now it's MY house, and I'm telling you to leave." "Where am I supposed to go?" Arch asked desperately. "Maybe you can stay with one of your friends from the streets," I suggested. "The streets you loved so much, the streets you chose over your family." "Octavia, please." "You have 30 days, Arch," I said firmly. "And then the sheriff will escort you out if you're still here." I turned and walked back to my car, leaving Arch standing there, finally understanding what he'd lost. Octavia bought her husband's house. After 42 years of choosing the streets over his family, Arch is about to lose everything. But what happens next? Will he actually leave? And what other secrets does Octavia have? This story is just beginning. You need to subscribe right now. Hit that like button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Do you think Octavia did the right thing? Should she let Arch stay or kick him out? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, Australia? Let me know. The 30 days I gave Arch to move out were the most interesting days of my life. I'd spent 42 years being ignored, dismissed, and treated like I didn't matter. Now, suddenly, Arch couldn't stop calling me. My phone rang constantly. Text messages flooded in. He even showed up at my apartment, the small, comfortable place I'd been living in for the past 3 years since he kicked me out. But I didn't answer his calls. I didn't respond to his texts. And when he showed up at my door, I called the police and had him removed for trespassing. For the first time in 4 decades, I had the power, and I wasn't giving it up. The morning after I served Arch the eviction notice, my daughter Zenobia called me. "Mom, Dad just called me crying," she said. "He says you bought his house and you're kicking him out. Is that true?" "Yes," I said simply. "Mom," Zenobia sounded shocked. "How could you do that? That's Dad's house. Where is he supposed to go?" "Zenobia, that house was never just Dad's house," I said calmly. "I lived there for 17 years. I raised you and your siblings there. I cleaned it, maintained it, and made it a home while your father was out in the streets. But still, your father kicked me out of that house 3 years ago," I interrupted. "He told me it was his house, and if I didn't like how he lived, I could leave. So I left. And now the house is mine, legally purchased at auction. And I'm exercising my legal right as the owner to ask him to vacate." There was silence on the other end. "How did you afford to buy a house?" Zenobia finally asked. Mom, you're a retired bank teller. Where did you get that kind of money? I've been saving for 40 years, I said. Every penny I could hide from your father's wasteful spending, I saved. And now I have enough to buy the house he lost through his own negligence. I can't believe this, Zenobia said. Believe it, I said. And Zenobia, I love you, but I need you to understand. I spent 42 years being treated like nothing by your father. I'm not going to feel guilty for finally standing up for myself. I hung up before she could respond. Over the next few days, all 4 of my children called me, and their reactions were mixed. Pearlie, my second daughter, was sympathetic. Mom, I've watched Dad treat you badly my whole life, she said. If this is what you need to do to feel whole again, I support you. Thank you, baby, I said, tears in my eyes. Judge, my son, was angry. Ma, this is cold-blooded, he said. Dad might not have been perfect, but he's still our father. You're really going to make him homeless. Your father has friends he's spent 40 years prioritizing over his family, I said. I'm sure one of them will help him. That's messed up, Ma, Judge said and hung up. Winnie, my youngest, didn't call at all. She was close to her father, probably because she was the baby and Arch had been slightly more present during her childhood. I knew she was angry with me, but I also knew that one day she'd understand. As the 30-day deadline approached, Arch's tactics changed. First, he tried anger. He left voicemails screaming about how I was a terrible wife, how I'd always been jealous of his freedom, how I was trying to destroy him. When that didn't work, he tried guilt. Octavia, we were married for 42 years. That has to mean something. Please don't do this, I'm begging you. When guilt didn't work, he tried bargaining. What if I pay you rent? I can stay in the house and pay you every month. Please just don't make me leave. You can't afford rent, Arch, I said when I finally answered one of his calls. You couldn't afford the mortgage, which is why the house was foreclosed. What makes you think you can afford rent? I'll get a better job, Arch promised. I'll work harder, I'll change. You've been saying you'll change for 42 years, I said. I don't believe you anymore. Octavia, please, Arch's voice cracked. I'm 69 years old. Nobody's going to rent to an old man with no money. Maybe you should have thought about that before you spent your whole life choosing the streets over your family, I said. You have 15 days left, Arch. I suggest you start packing. 2 weeks after I served the eviction notice, there was a knock on my apartment door. I opened it to find all 4 of my children standing there. We need to talk, Zenobia said. I let them in, my heart heavy. I knew what this was about. They all sat in my small living room, looking at me like I was a stranger. Mom, we're here to ask you to reconsider, Pearlie began, even though I knew she'd been on my side initially. Dad called a family meeting and explained everything. He's really struggling. What did he explain? I asked. He said you've been holding a grudge against him for years, Judge said. He said he wasn't perfect, but he always provided for us. And now you're punishing him for past mistakes by taking his house. I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. Is that what he told you? Isn't it true? Winnie asked, speaking for the first time. Mom, you've always been so angry at Dad for going out with his friends. But men need space. Men need freedom. You were too controlling, and now you're being vindictive. I stared at my youngest daughter, the one I'd carried for 9 months, the one I'd raised while her father was in the streets, and I felt my heart break. Let me tell you what really happened, I said quietly. For the next hour, I told my children everything. Things I'd hidden from them to protect their relationship with their father. I told them about the women, about finding hotel receipts and love letters from other women in Arch's pockets. I told them about the money, about how Arch would gamble away his paychecks while I struggled to feed them. I told them about the times he'd disappear for days, leaving me alone with 4 children and no money for groceries. I told them about the verbal abuse, about how Arch would call me stupid, worthless, ugly, about how he'd tell me I was lucky he stayed with me because no other man would want me. I told them about the night he kicked me out, about how he'd said I contributed nothing to the marriage, that the house was his because the mortgage was in his name, and that I could leave if I didn't like it. By the time I finished, all 4 of my children were crying. "Mom, we didn't know," Zenobia whispered. "We didn't know it was that bad." "Of course you didn't know," I said. "I protected you from it. I wanted you to have a relationship with your father. I didn't want you to see how terribly he treated me." "Why didn't you leave sooner?" Pearlie asked. "Because I loved him," I said simply. "Because I believed in marriage. Because I kept hoping he'd change. And because I was afraid of being alone, afraid I couldn't make it on my own, afraid of what people would think." "But you're not afraid anymore," Judge said, looking at me with new respect. "No," I agreed. "I'm not afraid anymore. I'm 67 years old and I've spent too many years being afraid. Now I'm taking back my power." "What happens to Dad?" Winnie asked quietly. "Your father is a grown man," I said. "He made his choices. For 42 years, he chose the streets, his friends, his freedom over his family. Now he has to live with the consequences of those choices." 30 days after I served the eviction notice, move-out day arrived. I drove to the house on Maple Street with my lawyer, Dovey, and a sheriff's deputy. Arch's car was still in the driveway. He hadn't left. "Mrs. Green, are you sure you want to do this?" the deputy asked. "This is going to be difficult." "I'm sure," I said. We walked up to the front door. I used my key, MY key to MY house, and opened it. Inside, Arch sat on the couch, surrounded by boxes. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 30 days. "Arch, it's time to go," I said gently. "I don't have anywhere to go," he said, not looking at me. "That's not my problem," I said. "You had 30 days to figure it out." "Octavia, please." Arch looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry for everything, for all the years I treated you badly, for choosing my friends over you, for being a terrible husband. I'm sorry." "I believe you're sorry," I said, "but sorry doesn't change what you did. Sorry doesn't give me back 42 years of my life." "What do you want from me?" Arch asked desperately. "I want you to leave my house," I said. The deputy stepped forward. "Sir, you need to gather your belongings and vacate the property. If you don't leave voluntarily, I'll have to escort you out." Arch stood slowly. He looked around the house he'd been so proud of, the house he'd thought defined him as a man. "This was supposed to be my legacy," he said quietly. "This house. I worked so hard for it." "No, you didn't," I corrected. "You worked just enough to get the loan. Then you spent the next 20 years taking it for granted, missing payments, borrowing against it. You destroyed this house's value through your own negligence. I'm just cleaning up your mess." As Arch packed his things, I walked through the house. It was in terrible condition. The walls needed painting. The floors were damaged. The kitchen appliances were ancient and broken. The bathrooms were filthy. Arch had lived here for 3 years without me, and he'd let the place fall apart. In the master bedroom, I found something that made my blood boil. Pictures on the nightstand, pictures of Arch with a woman I didn't recognize. They looked cozy, intimate. I picked up one of the photos and walked back to the living room where Arch was packing. "Who is this?" I asked, holding up the picture. Arch's face went pale. That's nobody." "It's not nobody," I said. "She's in your bedroom, in pictures on your nightstand. Who is she, Arch?" "Her name is Artie," Arch finally admitted. "I've been seeing her for about a year." I stared at him. "You've been living in this house, the house we shared, the house where we raised our children, with another woman." "We're getting divorced anyway," Arch said defensively. "What does it matter?" "It matters because you kicked me out of this house while you moved your girlfriend in," I shouted. "You took away my home so you could play house with some other woman." "Octavia." "Where is she now?" I demanded. "Where's Artie? Why isn't she helping you move?" Arch looked down. "She left. When she found out I lost the house, she left." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "So your girlfriend only wanted you when you had a house. The minute you lost it, she was gone. Funny how that works, isn't it?" "Don't," Arch said quietly. "Don't what? Don't point out that you destroyed our 42-year marriage for a woman who didn't even stick around when things got hard. Don't point out that you chose the streets and your freedom and ended up alone anyway. Arch didn't answer. He just kept packing. 2 hours later, Arch had loaded all his belongings into his old truck. He stood on the porch, looking at the house one last time. "I really am sorry, Octavia," he said. "I know you don't believe me, but I am. I wasted our marriage. I wasted our life together, and I'm paying for it now." "Yes, you are," I agreed. "Can I ask you something?" Arch said. "What?" "Do you hate me?" he asked. "After everything, do you hate me?" I thought about it. Did I hate Arch? After 42 years of neglect, abuse, and betrayal? "No," I said honestly. "I don't hate you, Arch. I pity you. Because you had a family who loved you, a wife who was loyal to you, children who needed you. And you threw it all away for the streets, for your image, for your ego, and now you have nothing." "I deserve that," Arch said quietly. "Yes, you do," I agreed. "Goodbye, Arch." He got in his truck and drove away. I watched until he turned the corner and disappeared. Then I walked back into my house, MY house, and closed the door. Over the next 3 months, I renovated the house completely. New paint, new floors, new appliances, new everything. I hired contractors, supervised the work, and slowly transformed the house from Arch's neglected property into my beautiful home. My daughter, Pearlie, came to help me paint one weekend. "Mom, this place looks amazing," she said. "You've completely transformed it." "I'm transforming my life," I said, "starting with this house." "I'm proud of you," Pearlie said. "I know that wasn't easy, buying the house, kicking Dad out, but you did what you needed to do." "Thank you, baby," I said. "Can I ask you something?" Pearlie said. "Where did you really get the money for all this? You said you'd been saving, but Mom, you bought a house and you're doing all these renovations. That's a lot of money." I smiled. "I told you I'd been saving for 40 years, but I didn't tell you everything." "What do you mean?" Pearlie asked. "I mean I wasn't just a bank teller," I said. "I was a bank teller who learned everything about finance and investing, and for the past 30 years, I've been investing my secret savings." Pearlie's eyes went wide. "How much money do you have, Mom?" "Enough," I said with a smile. "Enough to buy this house, enough to renovate it, enough to never worry about money again, and enough to teach you and your siblings how to build wealth too." One evening, 3 months after Arch moved out, my phone rang. It was Judge. "Ma, I need to tell you something," he said. "It's about Dad." My heart clenched. "What happened? Is he okay?" He's living in his truck," Judge said. "He's been sleeping in parking lots. He looks terrible, Ma. He's lost weight. He looks sick." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because he's our father," Judge said. "And I know he treated you badly. I know he doesn't deserve your help. But Ma, he's living in his truck. He's almost 70 years old. This is killing him." "What do you want me to do about it?" I asked. "Let him rent a room in the house," Judge said. "Just one room. Charge him rent if you want, but please don't let him live on the streets." I was quiet for a long time. "I'll think about it," I finally said. That night, I lay in my bed in my renovated house, thinking about Arch living in his truck. Part of me felt vindicated. He'd chosen the streets. Now he was literally living on them. But another part of me, the part that had loved him for 42 years, felt sad. I thought about what kind of person I wanted to be. Did I want to be someone who took pleasure in another person's suffering, even someone who'd hurt me? The next morning, I made a phone call. "Arch, it's Octavia," I said when he answered. "Octavia," he sounded surprised. "What do you want?" "I heard you're living in your truck," I said. There was a long silence. "Yeah, I am." "That needs to stop," I said. "You're almost 70 years old. You can't live like that." "I don't have anywhere else to go," Arch said, his voice breaking. "Nobody wants to rent to me. I don't have enough money. I'm stuck." "You can rent a room in the house," I said. "What?" Arch sounded shocked. "You can rent the small bedroom on the first floor," I said. $200 a month. You'll have your own space, but we'll share the common areas. and there will be rules. Rules? Arch asked. Yes, no women, no parties, no drinking, you pay rent on time, you keep your space clean, and you treat me with respect. If you break any of these rules, you're out immediately. Understood. Octavia, why are you doing this? Arch asked. After everything I did to you. Because I'm not you, I said simply. I'm not cruel, I'm not heartless, and I don't want to become those things just to hurt you back. Thank you, Arch whispered. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, I said. We'll see if you can actually follow the rules. You can move in this weekend. OCTAVIA is letting Arch move back in. After everything he did, after kicking him out, after buying his house, she's giving him another chance. But with strict rules, will this work, or will Arch ruin it again? This story is getting crazy. Subscribe now, smash that like button, and turn on NOTFICTONS. Drop a comment. Is Octavia making a mistake letting Arch back in? Do you think he'll follow the rules? Where are you watching from? The day Arch moved back into the house, MY house, was one of the strangest days of my life. He pulled up in his old truck, looking thin and worn down. Gone was the cocky, confident man who'd walked the streets like he owned them. In his place was a broken, humbled man who could barely meet my eyes. Thank you for this, Octavia, he said as he carried his few belongings into the small first-floor bedroom. I won't let you down. We'll see. I said, remember the rules, Arch. Break them and you're out. I remember, he said quietly. For the first week, Arch was a model tenant. He stayed in his room most of the time. He paid his rent on time, exactly $200, counted out in cash. He cleaned up after himself. He was quiet and respectful. It was unsettling seeing him so, diminished. But I reminded myself that this was the consequence of his own choices. I was being more generous than he deserved. Living with Arch again, after 3 years of peace, was harder than I'd expected. Every time I saw him in the kitchen making coffee, I remembered all the mornings he'd ignored me while reading the paper. Every time I heard him moving around in his room, I remembered all the nights he'd come home at 3 a.m, waking me up with his noise. Every time he tried to make small talk, I remembered all the years he'd dismissed everything I said as unimportant. But I was determined to make this work, not for Arch's sake, but for my own. I needed to prove to myself that I could be the bigger person. One evening, about 3 weeks after Arch moved in, I was cooking dinner when he came into the kitchen. That smells good, he said. What are you making? Chicken and rice, I said. There was an awkward pause. Is there enough for 2? Arch asked hesitantly. I thought about saying no, about reminding him that he was just a tenant, not my husband anymore. But something in his voice, something vulnerable and hopeful, made me soften. Yes, I said, there's enough. We ate dinner together in silence. It was the first meal we'd shared in over 3 years. After dinner, Arch helped me wash the dishes without being asked. That was new. Octavia, he said as he dried a plate, can I ask you something? What? I said warily. How did you do it? He asked. How did you save enough money to buy this house? I thought you were barely getting by. I smiled slightly. That's what you were supposed to think. But how? Arch pressed. You didn't work full-time. You were home raising the kids. I worked part-time jobs when I could, I explained. I sold crafts at flea markets. I did bookkeeping for small businesses from home. And every penny I made, I saved. Every penny you gave me for groceries, I stretched as far as it would go and saved the rest. For 40 years, Arch asked, stunned. For 40 years, I confirmed. And I invested it. I learned about the stock market, about mutual funds, about real estate. I turned my savings into real wealth. How much do you have? Arch asked. None of your business, I said firmly. That's my money and it will stay my money. Arch nodded, looking chastened. I'm sorry, you're right. I have no claim to anything you earned. No, you don't, I agreed. 2 months after Arch moved in, he asked if we could talk. Really talk. We sat in the living room, me in my favorite chair, him on the couch, a respectful distance between us. "I owe you a real apology," Arch began. "Not just I'm sorry, but a real explanation of what I did and why it was wrong." "I'm listening," I said. "I was a terrible husband," Arch said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I chose my ego over my family. I chose looking cool in front of my friends over being a father to my children. I chose my freedom over your happiness. And I convinced myself that it was okay because I was providing." "You barely provided," I pointed out. "I was the one who kept this family afloat." "I know," Arch said. "I see that now. When I was living in my truck with nowhere to go and nobody to help me, I had a lot of time to think. And I realized that all those friends I prioritized, they disappeared the minute I needed them." "Where are they now?" I asked. "Gone," Arch said bitterly. "Some are dead, some moved away. The ones who are still around won't return my calls. Turns out, street loyalty doesn't mean much when you have nothing left to offer." "And Artie," I asked, "your girlfriend?" Arch flinched. "She left the day after I told her about the foreclosure. Didn't even pack her things herself, just had her brother come get them while I was out looking for work." "So you gave up your marriage for a woman who didn't even care about you," I said. "Yes," Arch admitted. "I did, and I hate myself for it." We sat in silence for a moment. "Octavia, I know I don't deserve forgiveness," Arch continued. "I know I ruined our marriage and hurt you in ways I can never take back, but I want you to know that I see it now. I see how wrong I was, and I'm so, so sorry." "Thank you for saying that," I said. "It doesn't change the past, but it means something." "Is there any chance?" Arch started, then stopped. "Any chance of what?" I asked. "Any chance you could ever forgive me. Not take me back, I know that ship has sailed, but just forgive me so we can both move forward." I thought about it. Could I forgive Arch after 42 years of pain? "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe someday, but not yet. The wounds are still too fresh." "I understand," Arch said. "I'll wait, however long it takes." 3 months after Arch moved in, all 4 of our children came to visit for Sunday dinner. It was the first time we'd all been together in the house since I bought it. Zenobia brought her husband and 2 kids. Pearlie came with her partner. Judge brought his wife. And Winnie came alone, still somewhat distant with me but trying. "Wow, Mom, this place looks amazing," Zenobia said, looking around at the renovated house. "You've completely transformed it." "Thank you, baby," I said. "Where's Dad?" Judge asked. "In his room," I said. "He's giving us space for family time." "You're really making him stay in his room?" Winnie asked, her voice cold. "No," I said calmly. "He chose to stay in his room because he knows this is my house and he's just a tenant. But if you want him to join us, you can invite him." Winnie went to Arch's room and brought him out. He looked nervous, uncomfortable in a house that used to be his domain. We all sat around the dining table, the same table where we'd had family dinners decades ago, but everything was different now. "So, how's this arrangement working?" Pearlie asked. "You 2 living together after everything that happened." "We're not living together," I corrected. "Arch rents a room from me. We're landlord and tenant, not husband and wife." "Are you still getting divorced?" Zenobia asked. "Yes," I said. "The divorce is almost finalized. This arrangement doesn't change that." Arch looked down at his plate, saying nothing. "Dad, how do you feel about all this?" Judge asked. Arch took a deep breath. "I feel like I got exactly what I deserved. I spent 42 years treating your mother terribly, and now I'm living in a room in her house, paying her rent, following her rules. It's humbling, it's humiliating, and it's fair." The kids all looked surprised. They'd never heard their father talk like this before. "Your mother could have left me homeless," Arch continued. "After everything I did to her, she would have been justified. But she didn't. She gave me a place to live when nobody else would, and I'm grateful every single day." Winnie's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, I'm sorry. I blamed Mom for kicking you out. I didn't understand how bad things really were." "Don't apologize," Arch said. "I'm the one who should apologize. To you, to your siblings, and especially to your mother. I failed you all. After dinner, while the men were watching football and the kids were playing, the women gathered in the kitchen to help me clean up. Mom, can I ask you something? Zenobia said as she dried dishes. Of course, I said. You said you invested your savings. How did you learn to do that? You never went to college. I taught myself, I said. I read books from the library. I attended free seminars at the community center. I talked to financial advisors. I learned everything I could about money because I knew I couldn't rely on your father. Can you teach us? Pearlie asked. I feel like I'm always struggling with money. I work hard, but I never seem to get ahead. Me too, Zenobia added. My husband and I both work full-time, but we're living paycheck to paycheck. Even Winnie nodded. I could use some help too. I looked at my daughters and daughter-in-law, and I realized this was an opportunity. I'll do better than teach you, I said. I'm going to show you. Starting next month, we're going to have monthly money meetings. I'll teach you budgeting, investing, saving, everything I know, and I'll help you build wealth the way I did. Really? Zenobia's eyes lit up. You do that? Of course, I said. I don't want you to struggle like I did. I want you to have security, independence, and options. That's real wealth. 6 months after Arch moved in as my tenant, our routine had settled into something almost comfortable. He worked part-time at a local auto shop, doing oil changes and basic repairs. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and he seemed to take pride in it. He paid his rent on time every month without fail. He kept his room clean. He helped with household chores without being asked. He was respectful and quiet. The Arch I'd been married to would never have done any of those things. One evening, I was sitting on the back porch, enjoying the sunset, when Arch came out and asked if he could join me. It's a free country, I said. He sat down in the other chair, keeping a respectful distance. I got my first paycheck from the auto shop today, he said. It's not much, but it's honest money. First honest money I've earned in a long time. That's good, Arch, I said. I was thinking, he continued, about what you said about teaching the kids about money. Could you teach me too? I looked at him in surprise. You want financial advice from me? I do, Arch said, because clearly you know what you're doing and I don't. I spent my whole life chasing money but never keeping it. You quietly built wealth while I was out trying to look rich. I want to learn how to actually be smart with money. It's a little late for that, isn't it? I asked. You're almost 70. It's never too late to learn, Arch said. Even if I can't build much at my age, at least I can leave our kids and grandkids with some wisdom. Better late than never. I thought about it. Teaching Arch about money felt strange, considering our history. But I'd already decided to be the bigger person in this situation. Fine, I said. You can join the monthly money meetings with the kids. Thank you, Octavia, Arch said quietly. For everything, for this second chance, for not giving up on me completely. I didn't do it for you, I said honestly. I did it because I refused to let your mistakes turn me into a cruel person. I'm better than that. Yes, Arch agreed. You are. The first monthly money meeting was held in my living room. All 4 kids came, plus their partners and Arch. I taught them about budgeting first, how to track expenses, how to prioritize needs over wants, how to save systematically. Mom, this is so helpful, Zenobia said, taking notes. Why didn't you teach us this when we were growing up? I tried, I said, but your father had different ideas about money. He thought budgeting was for people who were too scared to live. He believed in spending money to look successful, even if you weren't actually successful. Everyone looked at Arch. He shifted uncomfortably. Your mother's right, Arch said. I taught you all the wrong lessons about money. I taught you that image matters more than substance, that you should spend to impress people. That saving was for suckers. I was wrong about all of it. What changed your mind? Judge asked his father. Living in my truck, Arch said simply. When you lose everything and realize none of your friends will help you, when you're sleeping in parking lots at 69 years old, you start to understand that maybe you had it all backwards. The room was quiet. "I'm proud of you, Dad," Pearlie said softly. "For admitting you were wrong, that takes courage." Arch's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, baby girl." 1 year after Arch moved in as my tenant, something unexpected happened. I came home from the grocery store to find Arch in the kitchen, cooking. "What are you doing?" I asked, surprised. "Making dinner," Arch said. "I wanted to do something nice for you. You've been so generous letting me live here, teaching me about money. I wanted to say thank you." He'd made my favorite meal, pot roast with vegetables, just the way I liked it. We sat down to eat together, and for the first time in decades, I felt peaceful. Not in love, not romantic, just peaceful. "Octavia, can I tell you something?" Arch said. "What?" I asked. "This past year, living here under your roof, following your rules, learning from you, it's been the best year of my life." I raised an eyebrow. "Better than all those years on the streets, better than your freedom." "So much better," Arch said. "Because for the first time in my life, I have structure, I have purpose. I have someone who expects better from me and holds me accountable. The streets gave me nothing but emptiness." "You're just saying that because you need a place to live," I said skeptically. "No," Arch said firmly. "I mean it. Octavia, you saved my life. Not just by giving me a roof over my head, but by showing me what real strength looks like. You built wealth in silence. You raised our children alone. You survived my abuse and came out stronger. You're the most impressive person I've ever known." I didn't know what to say. This was so different from the Arch I'd known. "I don't want your gratitude, Arch," I finally said. "I want you to keep being this person. The person who shows up, who works hard, who respects boundaries. That's what I need from you." "I will," Arch promised. "I swear I will." 2 weeks later, our divorce was finalized. 42 years of marriage officially over. I sat in the lawyer's office, signing the final papers, feeling nothing. No sadness, no relief, just a sense of closure. "Congratulations, Mrs. Green," Dovey said. "You're officially single." "Thank you," I said. When I got home, Arch was waiting in the living room. "I heard the divorce was finalized today," he said. "Yes," I confirmed. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Free," I said honestly. "For the first time in my adult life, I feel completely free." Arch nodded, looking sad but accepting. "I'm happy for you. You deserve freedom. You deserve everything good." "What about you?" I asked. "How do you feel?" "Regretful," Arch said, "but also grateful. Grateful that even though our marriage is over, I still get to be in your life in some small way. That's more than I deserve." "Yes," I agreed. "It is." The divorce is finalized. Octavia is officially free. But Arch has completely changed, or has he? Is this transformation real, or is it just an act? And what happens next between these two? Chapter 4 is the finale, and you cannot miss it. Subscribe now, smash that like button, and turn on NOTFICTONS. Drop a comment. Do you think Arch's change is genuine? Should Octavia give him another chance at their relationship? Where are you watching from? 2 years after I bought Arch's house and made him my tenant, my life looked completely different than I ever imagined it would. I was 69 years old, officially divorced, financially independent, and living on my own terms for the first time in my life. And surprisingly, Arch was still my tenant, still following the rules, still showing up as a completely different person than the man I'd been married to. But the real transformation wasn't just in him, it was in me. The monthly money meetings I'd started with my children had grown into something bigger than I'd expected. Word spread through our community about the money wisdom sessions happening at my house. Soon, I wasn't just teaching my children. I was teaching their friends, neighbors, church members, anyone who wanted to learn. My living room would be packed with 20 or 30 people every month, all eager to learn how to budget, save, and invest. "Mrs. Green, you changed my life," a young woman named Dovey told me after one session. "I was drowning in credit card debt, but after following your advice for 6 months, I've paid off half of it and I'm actually saving money." I'm proud of you, I told her. That's hard work, you should be proud of yourself. Arch had become my assistant at these meetings. He'd share his own story, how he'd wasted money for decades, how he'd lost everything, how he was now learning to do better. I'm living proof of what not to do, Arch would tell the group. I spent my whole life chasing the appearance of success while Mrs. Green here was quietly building real wealth. Learn from her, not from me. People appreciated his honesty. And I had to admit, having Arch acknowledge his mistakes publicly was validating in a way I hadn't expected. One evening, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my daughter Pearlie came to visit with an interesting proposal. Mom, I've been thinking, she said. You're so good at teaching people about money, you should make it official, start a business. A business? I asked. Pearlie, I'm 69 years old. I'm too old to start a business. No, you're not, Pearlie insisted. Mom, you have knowledge that people desperately need. You could offer financial coaching, classes, workshops. You could help so many people. I don't know anything about running a business, I protested. But I do, Pearlie said. I've been working in business management for 15 years. I could help you set everything up. We could be partners. You provide the expertise, I handle the business side. I thought about it. The idea was both exciting and terrifying. Let me think about it, I said. That night, I was sitting on the back porch when Arch came out. Can I join you? He asked, as he did most evenings now. Sure, I said. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. I heard Pearlie's proposal, Arch said, about the business. Were you eavesdropping? I asked. These walls are thin, Arch said with a slight smile. But Octavia, I think you should do it. You're brilliant with money. You could help a lot of people. I'm not brilliant, I said. I just learned to be careful. You built a fortune from nothing while raising 4 kids and dealing with a terrible husband, Arch said. That's not just being careful. That's genius. I looked at him in surprise. Did you just compliment me? I've been complimenting you for 2 years, Arch said. You just don't believe me. Can you blame me? I asked. You spent 42 years tearing me down. No, Arch said quietly. I can't blame you at all. After 2 weeks of thinking about it, I called Pearlie. Let's do it, I said. Let's start the business. Really? Pearlie squealed with excitement. Oh, Mom, this is going to be amazing. Over the next 3 months, Pearlie and I worked together to build green financial coaching. We created a website, developed programs, and set up a proper business structure. We offered 3 services. One-on-one financial coaching. Group workshops on budgeting and investing. A 12-week intensive program for people rebuilding their finances after major life changes. Within the first month, we had 15 clients. By the 3rd month, we had 50. The business was thriving, and I was loving it. For the first time in my life, I was using my skills and knowledge in a formal way. I wasn't just surviving, I was helping others thrive. As my business grew, Arch continued to surprise me. He'd gotten a promotion at the auto shop and was now managing the service department. He was making decent money and had started his own savings account. Look at this, he said one evening, showing me his bank statement. I've saved $3,000 in 6 months. I've never had savings before. That's wonderful, Arch, I said, genuinely pleased. I'm proud of you. It feels good, Arch said, knowing I have money set aside, knowing I'm not one emergency away from disaster. You taught me that. He'd also started going to therapy. He told me he was working through his issues, his need for validation from others, his fear of being seen as weak, his tendency to prioritize image over substance. The therapist asked me why I needed the streets so badly, Arch told me one day. Why I needed my friends to see me as the cool guy, the street king. And I realized I was terrified of being ordinary. I thought if I wasn't the man everyone wanted to hang out with, I was nothing. And now, I asked. Now I'm learning that being ordinary is okay, Arch said. Being a good person, showing up, doing honest work, that's enough. I don't need to be the king of anything. One of the unexpected joys of this new chapter of my life was spending more time with my grandchildren. Zenobia's kids, Royal age 12 and Artie age 9, started coming to visit me every weekend. They loved hearing stories about how I'd built my wealth, and they were eager to learn about money. "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be rich like you," Royal said one Saturday. "Then you need to learn to save and invest," I told him, "not spend money trying to look rich." "That's what great-grandpa did, right?" Artie asked. "He spent all his money trying to look cool." I glanced at Arch, who was sitting nearby. He looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything. "Yes," I said. "Your great-grandfather made some mistakes with money, but he's learning to do better now. It's never too late to change." Royal looked at Arch. "Is that true, great-grandpa? Are you learning from Grandma?" "Yes, I am," Arch said. "Your grandmother is the smartest person I know. If I'd listened to her 40 years ago, my life would have been very different." "Why didn't you listen?" Royal asked with the blunt honesty of a child. "Because I was foolish," Arch said. "I thought I knew everything. I thought being a man meant doing whatever I wanted. I was wrong about everything." "But you're doing better now," Artie asked. "I'm trying," Arch said. "Every day I'm trying to be better." 3 years to the day after I bought the house at auction, I decided to do something special. I invited the whole family for dinner, all 4 of my children, their partners, the grandchildren, and yes, Arch. I cooked a huge meal, and we all gathered around the dining table that had seen so many family moments over the years. "I want to make a toast," I said, standing up with my glass of sparkling cider. Everyone raised their glasses. 3 years ago today, I did something that changed my life," I began. "I bought this house at auction, the house I'd been kicked out of, the house where we'd raised our family, the house that represented everything I'd lost." I looked around at my children's faces. "But buying this house wasn't just about having a roof over my head," I continued. "It was about reclaiming my power, about proving to myself that I was strong enough to survive on my own, about showing my children that you don't have to accept mistreatment just because it's familiar." "Hear, hear," Pearlie said, wiping tears from her eyes. "I also want to say something about forgiveness," I continued. "For 3 years, I've been living in this house with your father as my tenant, and I've watched him transform. I've watched him work hard, learn humility, and become a better person." Arch looked down at his plate, clearly emotional. "I'm not saying I've forgotten the past," I said. "I haven't, I never will. But I have learned that people can change, and that choosing to be kind even to someone who hurt you doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong." I raised my glass higher. "So here's to new beginnings, to second chances, to building the life you deserve no matter how old you are, and to family, messy, complicated, but ultimately what matters most." "Cheers," everyone said together. As we clinked glasses, I caught Arch's eye. He mouthed thank you to me across the table. I nodded, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement. After dinner, while everyone was having dessert, Zenobia stood up. "Mom, we have something to tell you," she said. "What is it?" I asked. "We've been talking, all of us kids, and we want to invest in your business," Zenobia said. "We want to help you expand green financial coaching." "What?" I was shocked. "Why?" "Because what you're doing is important," Judge said. "You're helping people build better lives. You're teaching people things they should have learned in school but didn't. We want to be part of that." "We're proposing a family business," Pearlie added. "You and I continue running it, but Zenobia handles marketing, Judge manages the technology side, and Winnie does community outreach." "All of us working together," Winnie said, "using what you taught us to help others." I felt tears streaming down my face. "You all want to work with me." "We want to work with you, Mom," Zenobia said. "Not for you, with you, as equal partners." "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "Say yes," Pearlie urged. "Yes," I said, laughing through my tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, Arch approached me. "Octavia, can we talk?" he asked. Of course, I said. We sat in the living room, and Arch looked nervous, more nervous than I'd seen him in years. I need to ask you something, he said, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay, I said. Is there any chance at all, that we could try again? Arch asked. Not as landlord and tenant, not as ex-husband and ex-wife, but as two people who care about each other and want to build something new. I stared at him in shock. Arch, are you asking to get back together? I'm asking if you'd consider it, Arch said. I know I don't deserve it. I know I destroyed our marriage. But Octavia, these past 3 years living with you, learning from you, becoming a better person, they've been the happiest years of my life. And I realize that I still love you. I probably never stopped loving you. I was just too foolish to show it properly. Arch, I didn't know what to say. I'm not asking you to decide right now, Arch said quickly. I'm just asking you to think about it, to consider whether the man I've become is someone you could build a life with. The man you've become, I asked. Arch, how do I know this is real? How do I know you won't go back to being the old you the minute you get comfortable? You don't know, Arch admitted. All I can do is show you day by day that I've changed. And if you decide the answer is no, I'll accept it. I'll continue being your tenant, following your rules, respecting your boundaries. But I had to ask. I had to tell you how I feel. I spent the next 2 weeks thinking about Arch's request. Part of me was tempted. The Arch who'd been living in my house for 3 years was different from the man I'd divorced. He was humble, respectful, and hardworking. He acknowledged his mistakes. He treated me with kindness. But another part of me remembered the pain. 42 years of being dismissed, ignored, belittled. Could I really risk going through that again? I talked to my children about it. Mom, it's your decision, Zenobia said. But I will say Dad really has changed. I've seen it. We all have. But has he changed enough? Pearlie asked. Has he changed permanently, or is this just temporary? Only time will tell, Judge said. But Mom, you deserve to be happy, whatever that looks like for you. Do you still love him? Winnie asked bluntly. I thought about it. Did I still love Arch? I love who he's become, I said honestly, but I don't know if I can ever fully trust him again. Finally, I made my decision. I called Arch into the living room one evening. I've thought about your question, I said. Arch sat forward, his face anxious. And the answer is no, I said gently. I can't get back together with you, Arch, not romantically. His face fell. I understand. But, I continued, I do want to continue what we have now. This partnership, this friendship, this mutual respect. I like having you in my life in this way. I like seeing you grow and change. I like our evening conversations and our shared dinners. I just don't want to be your wife again. Why not? Arch asked quietly. Because I finally learned to love myself, I said. For 42 years, I defined myself by our marriage, by being your wife, by taking care of you and our children. And when our marriage ended, I had to figure out who Octavia Green was without you, and I like who I found. I took his hand gently. I'm happy, Arch, truly happy. I have my business. I have my family. I have my independence. And I have you in my life as a friend and tenant. That's enough for me. But it's not a romance, Arch said. No, I confirmed. It's not, and I don't want it to be. I need to protect my peace, and romance with you, even the new you, would threaten that peace. Arch was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. I respect that, he said, and I'm grateful for whatever you're willing to give me. If friendship is all you can offer, then I'll treasure that friendship. Thank you for understanding, I said. Thank you for giving me any space in your life at all, Arch said. It's more than I deserve. A year after that conversation, my life had settled into a beautiful rhythm. Green Financial Coaching had expanded into a full-service financial education company. We now had an office, 5 employees, and over 200 clients. We'd helped people pay off millions of dollars in debt and build hundreds of thousands in savings. My children were all thriving. Zenobia had started her own side business. Pearlie had paid off her house. Judge had built a 6-month emergency fund. and Winnie had started investing in the stock market. My grandchildren were learning about money from a young age, setting them up for financial success their whole lives. And Arch was still my tenant, still following the rules, still showing up as a better version of himself every day. We'd settled into a comfortable friendship. We had dinner together most evenings. We talked about our days, our families, our lives. We attended the grandchildren's events together. We were co-grandparents, co-teachers at the money workshops, and co-tenants in the house we'd once shared as husband and wife. It wasn't what either of us had expected, but it worked. On a warm spring evening, I sat on the back porch watching the sunset. Arch came out to join me, as he often did. "Beautiful evening," he said. "Yes, it is," I agreed. "Octavia, can I tell you something?" Arch asked. "Always," I said. "I used to think the streets gave me power," Arch said. "Having people know my name, having friends, being the man everyone wanted to hang out with. I thought that was power." "And now?" I asked. "Now I know that you had the real power all along," Arch said. "The power to build wealth in silence, the power to survive abuse and come out stronger, the power to forgive without forgetting, the power to set boundaries and stick to them. That's real power." "It took me 70 years to find that power," I said, "but I'm glad I finally did." "Me too," Arch said. "Because watching you use your power, not to destroy me, but to transform yourself and help others, that's been the greatest lesson of my life." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun disappear below the horizon. "Do you regret it?" I asked, "choosing the streets over the family all those years?" "Every single day," Arch said without hesitation. "I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me, you, for an illusion, and I can never get those years back." "No, you can't," I agreed, "but you can make the years you have left count." "That's what I'm trying to do," Arch said, "by being the man I should have been all along. Even if it's too late for us romantically, at least I can be a good father. Grandfather and friend." "That's enough," I said. "That's more than enough." As I looked out at the sunset from the porch of my house, the house I'd bought at auction, the house I'd reclaimed, the house that represented my strength, I thought about my journey. I'd spent 42 years as a wife who was taken for granted. 3 years as a divorced woman finding herself. And now, at 70 years old, I was finally living as the person I was always meant to be: strong, independent, successful, and surrounded by people who respected me. Arch had chosen the streets over our family for decades. He'd regretted it the day I bought his house and showed him that I didn't need him. I'd never needed him. But more importantly, that day had shown me something I'd forgotten over 42 years of marriage. I was enough. All by myself, I was enough. The house on Maple Street wasn't just a house anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, of redemption, of reclaiming power, and of building the life you deserve, no matter how late you start. And as I sat there on that porch, with the man who'd once dismissed me now sitting beside me in humble silence, I smiled. Because I'd won, not by destroying him, but by building myself up. And that was the sweetest victory of all. What an incredible journey. Octavia went from being dismissed and kicked out to buying her husband's house, transforming her life, building a business, and finding true happiness and power. This story proves that it's never too late to reclaim your power. You don't need someone else to define your worth. Real strength comes from building yourself up, not tearing others down. Financial independence is true freedom. People can change, but you don't have to take them back. The best revenge is living well. If this story inspired you, please subscribe to this channel for more empowering stories. Smash that like button. Turn on notifications for new content. Drop a comment. What was your favorite part of Octavia's journey? Did she make the right choice, not getting back with Arch? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, Kenya, South Africa, Australia, Trinidad, India? Let me know. Remember, your worth is not defined by how others treat you. You have the power to reclaim your life, rebuild your future, and create the happiness you deserve. It's never too late. Thank you for following Octavia's powerful transformation from dismissed wife to independent powerhouse. May her story inspire you to find your own power. Until the next story, stay strong, stay independent, and never forget, you don't need anyone's permission to be great.